On this week's episode, we talk all about our advocacy journeys on the internet.
Yes, we talk about why we started advocating and how we still feel about it today.
So stick around.
Hello and welcome to Rare with Flair,
the podcast where two best friends with the same rare disease are living our best lives. I'm your host, Cassandra.
And I'm your host, Casey.
How you been, girl?
I have been well. I feel like things have been kind of slower for me lately. I haven't been traveling as much, which is kind of nice.
That is nice. Are you traveling like 13 times?
Something like that. Yes, it sounds obnoxious because it is. But I'm just trying to enjoy the summer, not try to, skip ahead too far and get excited for the fall, which is what my brain wants to do. But I say no.
Girl, I was already doing that. Stop.
I need to enjoy the moment. I need to enjoy the moment because in the wintertime, I want the summer so badly, and I need to enjoy now that I'm in it. But
True.
I did want to tell the audience today that something very exciting happened over the last couple of days.
What's that?
It was, yes, I'm going to tell everyone. It was our dear Cassandra's birthday.
Woo!
over the weekend. And I'm so sad I didn't mention it in the prior pod. We were having some tech issues and I just forgot about it. But now I'm saying it now. So everyone, please wish Cass a belated happy birthday. Cass, how was your birthday? How was it?
It was great. So I turned 26 and I wanted it to be kind of low key. So I did it up a little bit last year when I turned 25. And I was like, okay, 26 is kind of an unremarkable age. Let's be real. So, I wanted to have a nice, chill day. And that is exactly what I had. I was very pleased. I took myself to get some ice cream. I played some video games. And then in the evening of my birthday, which fell on a Saturday, it was kind of nice. My friends and I went mini golfing, which I really like mini golf. I think it's so entertaining, and we had a really good time. We opted for, there were 7 of us, so we opted for maximum chaos, where each of us would hit a ball and not finish a turn. So a lot of the balls ended up clustered around each other, so then we would have someone who was behind someone else hit, so that the balls would go flying everywhere. It was really funny.
That's so funny. And you dressed up really retro and cute too for this occasion.
Oh, thank you. I was feeling it.
I don't know why.
I borrowed a petticoat from my friend in order to make a dress that I already owned poofier. I felt amazing.
It goes so well with golfing for whatever reason. You just looked really classy.
Thank you. It was a blast. The other thing I wanted to tell the pod. So first, there are a couple activities, or probably more than a couple, but 2 that I think of immediately that seem like they're visual, but in fact, in my opinion, are also very intuition based. So I'm not so bad at them. One of them is throwing darts and the other is mini golf. And so with both of these activities, I'm never really going to win, but I am going to get a bullseye or a hole in one. So I got 2 holes in one while we played mini golf. And my friends were they're always shocked when it happens. And you know what? Me too.
Yeah, because I've had similar experiences with archery. We're all get it perfectly.
Yeah.
But it's not every time. It's kind of like a beginner's luck situation. I'm not sure.
Very inconsistent.
I've had similar experiences with that. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we did was at the place where we had the mini golf, there were some batting cages, and so my friends wanted to play, and they got some tokens. And after we finished our round of mini golf, they were like, "Oh, we got to finish up our tokens." So we went in and we went to the slow pitch softballs. So it wasn't 70-mile-per-hour baseballs, but I did hit a couple softballs, and I was really proud of myself. I felt
Oh
like
my
I was swinging
gosh.
wildly, but my friends were very supportive. They like cheered really loud when I hit them. I was
I
honored.
love that. I mean, we all know that I'm not athletic at all, but I've always wondered how I would be.
Girl, you're always on your stationary bike. Like, she'll send me memos and be like, I'm sorry, I'm out of breath. I'm working out. Like,
Here's the thing. Okay, that's because I listened because you send me a bunch of memos while I'm asleep, and I listen to them in the morning while I'm on my bike. I can't help the timing. But the thing is, there's a difference. There is a big difference, in my opinion, between being in shape and being athletic. I'm not athletic at all. But like I am good at like cardio, but I'm not athletic. I'm not coordinated. I'm not strong. Anyway, but that's beside the point. I've always wondered how I would be at like blind sports, like goal ball or beep ball or those kind of sports. Because
I was
think
thinking
some
of beep ball while I was playing, or while I was trying to hit the softballs. I was like, I wonder if that would make it easier or harder, because I was really having a hard time seeing the ball. It was in no way helped that my friend who had rented the helmet has like a surprise. It's proportional to his body, but like he has like a huge head compared to mine. And so like the helmet was also in my eyes. So I not only couldn't see normal, but I also couldn't see because there was a helmet in my eyes.
Yes. But it sounds like a great time.
It was really fun. We had cupcakes, and it was everything I wanted it to be, and for that, I'm very, satisfied.
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, girl.
So, since we're talking now here on the internet, I'm making a segue. It's not good. Here we are. Anyway, so we've had this pod for nearly 3 years, which is wild to think about. I can't believe it. But this is not our first time doing online advocacy.
Yeah. So we kind of want to talk about online advocacy, why we started doing it, why we still continue to do it, and all the feelings that come with that. Some good, some bad. Cass and I have done online advocacy on like public platforms like blogs or YouTube, but we've also done some advocacy on our private Instagram, Facebook, social media, which is like a whole different thing we want to dive into too. So this is going to be like a interesting episode. We were kind of joking that it feels kind of meta that we're talking about why we do advocacy on our podcast about advocacy. But I think it's the reason why we're doing this pod. I think it's cool to talk about. When did it start for you? When do you remember first advocating online on the interwebs?
So it's interesting, like, I remember when I got a Facebook when I turned 13, because in that time when I was 13 in the 2010s, or in 2010, it was like the thing. Like, everyone had the Facebook, and that is how people use it. Believe it or not, if you are younger than us and have only ever really known Facebook to be like this antiquated form of social media, millennials and older Gen Zers will tell you we used it a lot. We put a lot of information on there.
We sure did.
I literally, as a tangent, I literally uncovered a layer of Facebook, I think yesterday, where I was like, oh my gosh, what are all of these things that I did on my profile when I was 13? Remember when there were like pages you would like that had random names? Yeah, so I found where they all live, and I was like, no! But,
oh my gosh.
But I remember, like, I think when it came to social media, I did that mostly in college. When I'm talking about earlier on, maybe like my teenage years, there were some, I had my advocacy more in different areas, and then I did it for different organizations. So when I was, I think, 15, I started writing for the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation's quarterly magazine they call Albinism Insight, which, yeah, it's like a really funny pun. I love it. So I would put out articles, short or long, and I was pretty consistent about it up until there were periods of time where I was really sick, because around that time is when I had a lot of issues with my colitis for HPS. So that was something that I did that I felt like was really satisfying. And I don't know that I'm still trying to think if I like utilized Facebook a lot, but I think a lot of what I did was I tried to leverage school whenever possible when I was younger. And so there were a couple projects that I did that we got to choose a topic on and that I made relevant to me and having HPS. So when I was like a freshman in high school, I did this research report on the albinism in Tanzania crisis, which, if you don't know what that is, basically it's gotten better, but it's still a very modern crisis where people with albinism that are born in very rural places in Africa that don't really know what albinism is at all think that because these babies come out without pigment and they're like bright white skin and hair, that they somehow possess magical powers. And so they are actually physically hunted for their body parts and often murdered, and their body parts being sold on the black market, which is horrible. That the UN has done a lot to combat that, but I put together this research about it, and I did I edited a video and I showed it in class. I was really proud of myself.
Aww.
And then when I was a junior in high school, I did another research report on rare disease and the social and economic and emotional impacts that it has on both like the patients, the caregivers, the broader economy. And I did another presentation on that. And again, it was really cool to feel like connected to yourself in that way. Did you ever do stuff like that?
Yeah, I did do a few things in school regarding like advocacy about my vision. I did in our middle school, we had like a chapel, and I did a little speech about my vision there once. And then in college, which was much later in college, I took a public speaking class, and we had to choose at the beginning of the semester a topic to write like 4 or 5 speeches on, and I chose rare disease, kind of similar to what you were saying about like how it's
that's cool,
hard to get diagnosed and all of that. But yeah, I've been doing online advocacy since I was about 15 or 16. Growing up, I just always kind of felt, I know this is going to sound sad. I don't mean for it to sound sad, but I always kind of felt misunderstood. And I've always like, I had this fire in me to educate people and to teach people like how my life was. I just always had this desire. And so I started a YouTube channel when I was around, 15, 16. And YouTube was really different back then. Like, people, it wasn't a career for people. So people weren't like uploading on a schedule, like every Tuesday, like tune in. I mean, maybe some people were, but it wasn't the landscape of YouTube back then. So I would kind of just periodically post a video whenever I wanted to. It was really like once a year. Like, it was like so random, and like the most random people found my channel. But I really enjoyed that. It kind of gave me an outlet to talk about those things that felt kind of unspoken. And I always thought that everyone was like me. Like, I always thought like everyone with albinism or low vision wanted to talk about it. But actually, you'll find in this community that some people share a lot online about their journey, and some people don't want to talk about it at all. And I think like neither way is good or bad. You know, it's, you know, totally fine either way. But a lot of people don't want to be involved in the community or don't want to share their experiences online. And I kind of thought everyone was like me for a time until I met more people, and I was like, oh, that's just interesting. I'm not saying one way is better, but yeah. So did you feel that desire, you know, growing up to do online advocacy, or like did you have that desire?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I think I did. I'm thinking of something that you were saying though about how really quick not every person wants to talk about it, and I do really think that there's a lot of nature and nurture to that. I remember reading this like collection of essays from people with albinism. It was kind of an old compilation. Actually, it's called Riding the White Rainbow, which was really interesting. But it was all kinds of people talking about their experiences, and I did find that people who had more supportive families tended to embrace it and be more open to talk about it. And obviously that's not always like the case, but I think for both of us, we have that experience where we both had very supportive families, and therefore we felt comfortable talking about it and felt good about embracing it.
Yeah.
I did feel like I wanted to talk about it, not like incessantly, but I felt that, yeah, I was different. And it's hard because there's no one really around you that shares your same experience that you are living, and no one fully understands it, even if they can sympathize or can try to imagine. Like, they'll never really know what it's like. And so trying to explain my unique perspective felt good, and it felt like something I had wanted to do. There was a period of time where I think I was like in high school. I did feel that maybe like, oh, if I share my story, and this is already when I had like intestinal disease, so I had more than exclusively my vision, but I was thinking like, okay, maybe if I share my story, I can like help other people somehow. And I don't know if I feel exactly like that now. And I feel like we'll get to that a little bit, but I feel like that's getting into the weeds of like, why do we do this in the first place?
That is really getting into why we do this. And I think it's something, we're still doing it. We're doing this podcast. So it's something to really ask ourselves of, why do we continue to do this? And there's so many layers to it and so many different reasons. And I think for me, like when I started out and still now, like one of my biggest main reasons was to try to educate the general public about what someone with low vision or someone who's legally blind goes through, because I felt so like misunderstood, and I still do. And I feel, once again, like that sounds negative, or like I'm being, just this complaining person, or like I'm not trying to play the victim at all, but I do think like every day of my life, like going out in public, like people don't understand why I need to do things a certain way. And I just feel like it's one of those things that should be more commonly known and should be more commonly taught, but it's not. And it surprises me how little people know about low vision. And so that was like my main goal, is to teach people. And I think most people who listen to this podcast are in our community. So I kind of learned that I wasn't ever really reaching the public, which kind of made me sad. But I think my secondary reason for starting, when I started my YouTube channel, I didn't have any friends with albinism. I knew one person who was a good bit older than me who I loved, but I wanted to make friends. I wanted to get to know people in the community. And I think another reason was I did want to help people. Like, I am an Enneagram 2, if that means anything to any of you listening. We're the helper. I did want to help people because I felt kind of isolated as a child, and I wanted kids and parents to not feel the same way I did, to feel like there was someone there. And I sometimes I'm like, is there like an ego thing to that, of like, I want to feel good about myself, like I want to like help people? And I don't know, I hope not. Like I'm just digging in, I'm digging into the weeds in my brain right now. Like, I hope not. Like, I would like to think that I just wanted to be there for people the way that I didn't always have it. But I do think whenever you're putting yourself online, I once heard someone say, whenever you're putting yourself online, like making a video, you think you have something important to say. So you have some kind of self-importance.
Yeah.
Like you think that what you are saying is worth people listening to. So I do think there's a little bit of that. And I do think like, I'm just trying to be super honest here with why we do it. And I think there's like 10 different reasons. And hopefully those would be more towards the bottom of the list. But I do think like if we're trying to be super honest here of like why we do it, like what do you think? Like how do you feel about all of this?
Yeah. And it's funny, I feel like I haven't even really talked about a lot of the online stuff, and I think, and maybe I'm missing something entirely, but when I think about being a teenager, I didn't do a lot of the online stuff. When I did more online things, it was when I was in college and undergrad. So I was a bit older when I started doing more advocacy work online. But like when I think about advocating in general from a personal standpoint, I do think that part of it for me, and this feels very also Enneagram 8, was helping me to understand me and I connect with that part of my identity, because I always knew, like, I was diagnosed with Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome when I was effectively born, and so I always knew what I had and was very aware of it, was not shy about when I needed to talk about it with like teachers or things growing up. And we have like an episode we did about advocating in school that we've already done. But I think when I think back to some of those projects that I was talking about that I did for school, especially that first one, I did learn a lot about myself, and I remember that project, but because of what it taught me about me and less about the project itself, which is what I felt in the moment. So I wrote a quick bit about albinism and what albinism is, and I also wrote a little bit about Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, which albinism is a symptom of Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. So I wrote a quick blurb about it, and while I was online, I was 14, and this was already about the time when I was starting to have symptoms of of colitis with HPS. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was having issues, and in my family, other people had GI issues of varieties, and so I thought it might be that. But when I read online that some people with HPS get this, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't put that much stock into it, but it was also when I learned that I was going to get pulmonary fibrosis, and I think it was kind of a very unceremonious moment, which I'm glad it was. My parents never like sat me down and told me the implications of me having Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome, that I would eventually develop pulmonary fibrosis in my adult life. But like, I don't know, I read it online, and I didn't think too hard about it. I just kind of accepted it as fact, like, oh, okay, cool, all right, that's a thing. But I'm 14, and that doesn't really matter to me. But I learned a lot about myself in that moment while writing this thing for school, and I think it mattered. And even like what you were saying about wanting to connect with people like you, when I wrote for Albinism Insight, part of which was posted online, and I did post some of the articles I wrote online too, but I felt like I was connecting with my community, and I felt like my experiences going to NOAA conferences, which were really fun, that people didn't fully understand outside of the context. It was really cool because I got to put them in a place. I got to write about my fun time at the NOAA conference and put it out so that the community can read it. And if they haven't been to a conference, maybe it inspires them to go, and maybe they'll have a lot of fun. Yeah. So... Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was done.
Well, no, I like what you said about, like, it helps you learn more about yourself. I think we've said this many times before, but this podcast has helped us to be better advocates in our real life, and helped us to understand ourselves better and just be more confident in who we are and be unapologetically ourselves. And I think that's another part of advocacy. In order to advocate about your condition, you kind of have to accept it first. There has to be like an acceptance of like, I'm not ashamed to talk about this, and I'm going to do it. So I think there are so many different reasons why we advocate. And I think in my advocacy journey, I think one of the reasons I do it is I'm a passionate person. Like when I feel something, I feel it deeply. I'm an emotional person. And I think there have been certain things throughout this journey that I've been really passionate about, that I've spoken about. So like, I'm really passionate about diagnosis for rare diseases because my diagnosis came late, and I'm passionate about teaching the albinism community about HPS. I'm also passionate about the white cane, and I like really want to, you know, help people feel comfortable enough to not be afraid to use that. And there have been other things, you know, throughout my journey online that I've I've talked about all kinds of things as we have on this podcast, but I think what carries me through it is the passion that I feel for these topics. So I think some of it is like education, like trying to educate people, whether it be our community or just the general public on that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I will like really quick talk about some of the things I did when I was older to stay a little bit on theme. But so when I was a freshman in college, I think, or almost a sophomore, I started a little blog, and I say little because I didn't post on it so often, but I did really enjoy that. I didn't post regularly either, but it was more disability focused. I kind of talked about funny things and interesting stuff that probably we talk about on this podcast, very similar, of feeling like, you know, people recognize you everywhere. I think that was like my first post about, you know, just joking about how like I feel like a low-key celebrity even though I'm very much not. Like it was close to the time when I got my guide dog, Romana, and so when I went to Guide Dogs for the Blind, I did post about it, and I posted a few other pieces about, you know, what it's like to have a guide dog, and I don't know, just different thoughts, and I liked that outlet. You know, writing takes time, though, and being in college, it wasn't something I was able to keep up because I was also I was really busy in undergrad, but I really enjoyed that. I'm glad I had that for a short period of time. I did on and off do some work with the Positive Exposure Pearls Project, where they have on their own platform kind of isolated blogs where people with disabilities kind of just talk about their normal lives, and it's part of like a curriculum about educating about disabilities, so people will understand, you know, we're people as well as having disabilities, and there were a lot of people with a variety of disabilities that participated in this too. So that was I did that for a little bit too, and then around this time was also when I used Facebook a lot for the sake of advocacy.
Well, I want to get into that.
I don't really know if are we ready to dive in?
I think we are. Okay. I think we're ready. I think like online advocacy on these platforms that we've been talking about is different than advocacy on our personal, private social media pages with our friends and family. I think they're two different things almost, you know? But
very much so.
You have to understand the landscape of Facebook back in the day and how people shared a lot more personal things back then than they do now. As far as my age demographic goes, like from what I can see. And I will say for me personally, there are some things I shared on there that I'm still proud of or that I think were good. I would share things for like, you know, Albinism Awareness Day and things like that. But there were some other things, like some medical things mostly, that I shared that I would not do today. And I'm not necessarily ashamed of it, but I do. Here's my thing. I think when you post about something a lot, I used to post about disability a lot more because I didn't really have an outlet like I do now with the pod. And I feel like when I don't have an outlet, it's like bubbling inside of me, like ready to come out.
Yeah.
I would post about disability a lot more often. And I do feel I I feel like people who don't really know me, who just casually follow me, like people I used to know in elementary and middle school, or people like that don't know me in everyday life, probably think I was making it my whole personality, or, you know, trying to get attention, or just like obsessing over my blindness. When if you know me, like if you know me in real life, I don't even talk about it all that often unless it needs to be said. But because I was posting so much about it and that's all they were seeing of me, I do kind of regret how often I was posting, because I do think like it did look like it was my whole personality probably to some people, and it really isn't, but I feel like that was my outlet to talk about it. I don't know. What do you think?
No, yeah. Okay. So I have a similar and different. It's really interesting. When you say medical, you don't have to tell, don't tell us exactly what it was, but give an example that may or may not be true.
Like, okay, I just think it was funny how this is how Facebook was, but I would be like, I could just think of, it's so embarrassing. I would make
I'm sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. I want people to like have a picture.
I would make a status like, hey, like, since I can't take ibuprofen and I'm bleeding, like, what's the best what do you guys do? Like, to my other HPS friends, but it was like on my public, like, pay, like my Facebook page.
Yeah.
Or like, even when I got diagnosed with HPS, I think I made a post of like, there's this like rare disease I'm getting tested for. Cause like, why was I doing that? I don't know. But this was,
you're right though. That's exactly how it was.
That's how it was. Like, people were posting like, I just ate spaghetti for dinner. Like, it was like that. I mean,
it was every conscious thought when online.
It was literally 13
We didn't know what to
ago.
do with it.
But then also when I was in the hospital, I would like give updates sometimes, and I'd be like, day 3 in the hospital. Like, I wouldn't do that now. Yeah.
We know people that still do that, and that's like fine for them.
Yeah.
It just, no, I agree. So I started posting a lot after I got my colectomy, after I got my colon removed, part as a way to process through that.
Sure.
So when I was in the hospital, I didn't post like hardly anything. I did post some stuff. Maybe like a photo or something, or like a photo when I was getting out of the hospital. Mm-hmm. And when I was really sick, I think there were on and off photos of like, oh, LOL, back in the hospital, that I would put on like Instagram or something. But I really didn't have the time or mental energy to put all of what was going on online. And even then, even though it wasn't uncommon for people to use Facebook that way, I just really didn't want to post all of the details. I thought it was too much information for everyone to know. No shame if you do that and if that works for you. That's not something I would do. Also, I mean, I don't know, it's deeply personal. Like, not everyone needs to know. But after I got my colectomy, between, I would say, maybe after my first semester of college and then probably through my junior year, I would post with some frequency, especially my sophomore year, as I started to understand myself again more. Mm-hmm. So there were a couple years that I went to a conference. There's a group called Girls with Guts for women with bowel disease, and they're a really awesome group of ladies. So I went to their conferences like a few times maybe, and I felt very seen. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those women were very big advocates on social media, and so I also wanted to do that. So for things like, especially I remember this, there was a period of time in my sophomore year of college, I think it was around the winter, that I made a series of posts like every day talking about what the realities of having bowel disease were, and I was very open.
I remember that. Yeah, I actually remember those posts.
I was proud of them. I was happy to share them. It was like IBD Awareness Week or something. I ended up archiving a lot of them because I liked the thoughts, but I really didn't need the world to know after a certain point. Mm-hmm. But they were received really well.
Yeah.
I appreciated that because when I was going through it in high school, I didn't tell anyone. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a secret, but I just knew that people wouldn't understand, and so I didn't want to freak them out, and so I didn't say anything because I was like 17. Mm-hmm. And so I'm still kind of proud of those posts, even though they're not up anymore. Mm-hmm. I posted a series of photos of me wearing different dresses for dances in high school. And like just the various shapes that my body took, whether I was like on steroids or sick. I was like either like my face was swollen, or I was like really, really, really thin, or like concerningly so, or, you know, just I looked unhealthy at different periods of time. And like I talked about, you know, the impact of the dress that I wore when I graduated high school, where I looked like positively skeletal. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was before I had started getting therapy, before I even fully realized that I had post-traumatic stress disorder from all this whole medical trauma. It was important for me to start attempting to process through that trauma. And I think part of me regrets doing it in a public way, but I am at least glad that I put words to it. And I'm glad that I got to keep it for me, and now I got to archive it where only I can see it. Yeah. And sometimes I do go back through and read how I felt at the time, and I'm glad. And there was more than just that week. There were different times that I would post like more raw and open and honest, especially about my medical trauma. Mm-hmm. And I think I stopped because I think it was around the time when I was really not doing well in my mental health, when a lot of my PTSD started coming up strongly in 2018. It was a really difficult year for me, and I usually posted, and that was something I kept up until this year. I literally just forgot, and I didn't. It wasn't like a conscious choice. I was on vacation. I would post on the year anniversary of my total colectomy, and I like made this post, and I started noticing a certain tone in the comments and the replies, and people were nice, like they were really kind, but I realized that I was objectifying myself. Like in a way of like, people see you and they see this like quote unquote inspirational content, and they like it, so they feel good, and they kind of feel pity for you. And I was like, you know, I think that I'm gonna put a little bit of distance between me and the online world, because I started realizing maybe not everyone needs to know everything, and I can keep some things for just me. And I started getting like professional therapy, which also really helped me and gave me an outlet to talk about those traumatic events. Yeah, I feel like it is kind of, I feel like doing a lot of posting back in the day for me, it almost was like a therapy for me. And that's almost unhealthy to use Facebook as like your therapy, you know, but I was kind of doing that because I felt like it was these things that were so misunderstood, and I just wanted to feel seen. Sure. And I felt like if I posted and people liked it, they were seeing the things that I go through on a daily basis that aren't often seen. Right. And there are a few posts I made that I'm still kind of proud of. I remember I made a post about when this man accused me of faking blindness when I was using my white cane. And I made a post about it because I was so like angry when it happened.
And I remember that post like was well received too, and a lot of people were like sharing it. And I remember I also made an Albinism Awareness Day post once that a lot of people shared. Some people even stole it and used it as like made it look like they wrote it.
Yeah, I've seen that.
That made me mad. And now it's like the format I did it in was so silly, but back then that was like the way. It was like a bunch of like bullet points. But so yeah.
Oh yeah, I made so many of my statuses like that.
Yeah, it's so funny. So you know, I'm not like ashamed of everything I ever put. I just think I got really personal at certain times, and I think I think my biggest regret is kind of making it look like it was like my whole personality and that I wanted all this attention for it and all that. And I don't. That wasn't the case, but I think it probably looked like that to people who didn't know me. And I think I kind of stopped posting about any of this kind of when we started the pod. Because I felt like the pod allowed me to have an outlet to talk about all these things. And I kind of felt like if I was posting on Facebook or Instagram, that I kind of felt like if I was posting there, that I was overdoing it by doing that and the podcast. You know, I was like, the podcast is enough. I don't need to do a whole podcast and post about all this stuff. Like the pod is enough. And Cass and I, our Facebook and Instagram are private, by the way. Like we no shade to anyone. We're not, we're just private. But we don't even share the podcast very much. I usually share it like on our year anniversary, or if we do a fundraiser. Those are like the 2 times that I share it. But I feel like if I did this podcast 10 years ago, I might have been like sharing it a lot more.
Totally. Totally.
Actually, though, I never shared my YouTube. It was always a secret, actually.
Okay. Yes. I wanted to ask you about this because I remember this. This is when, like, I knew you. And, like, I remember in an HPS conference, like, early on, your mom told my mom that, like, oh, Casey has this YouTube channel. But, I mean, I shouldn't really be telling you about it because she doesn't like it when I tell people about it. And I didn't understand why, which is really funny because I know that I know that I think around the time that you're talking about when you were more active on your personal Facebook posting things, that story of being accused of faking blindness, you made a video about. Yeah, which is really interesting that you didn't share the video on social media. Why do you feel like that was?
I don't know. So when I started making videos when I was like 16, that was before I wasn't really posting about albinism when I was around that age on Facebook. And it was like a secret. And like sometimes people would find my channel back then and be like, I saw your video, and I'd be like so embarrassed because that was when YouTube was so small that you just like would see your friends upload things, which was so strange. But I don't know. I think it felt really vulnerable because it was just me talking to a camera. I think sharing the podcast feels less scary because I'm with you. So I feel like you give me some kind of like credibility because you're here, and like it makes me feel like somebody else is doing this too. But I feel
totally.
I don't know, because I was posting really like personal things and then I wasn't sharing those videos. So I do think that's kind of strange. I think it looked kind of attention grabby to me. I felt like it looked like there was something that looked like weird about it. Like, hey, watch me. Like, I like attention sometimes, but I also really don't at the same time. Like, I don't want to come off as like, everybody watch what I have to say. Like, so I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I think video is very much the format now. And and so I feel like now if you wanted to do something like that, it would probably be posting the link to the video. But I think there was some kind of degree of whether it was real or not separation behind the just plain text on a page. You don't have to show your face, and you can talk about things that happen to you, and you can edit it, and you can do all that with a video too. But I get that you feel a little bit more exposed because people hear your voice and see your face talking about this encounter.
And I think it's not even disability related, because when I had a BookTube channel for like 2 years, I was actively posting on this BookTube channel like twice a week. I never shared that on social media ever.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just
I remember
disability.
looking for it and like failing when we were living through that time.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there.
I know. It's cute though. Your content was really good.
Oh gosh, it's a product of its time. Like I
Very
went back
much so, but it was good.
so like back then on YouTube it was so hey everybody, it was very like high energy. I think now it's way more like real, like it's all about like being real, but back then it was like performative. So I was like, hey guys, what's up, it was crazy. But anyway, I never shared that either, so I don't even think it's like an advocacy thing. I think it was like something about it's not even like I'm vulnerable because I'm on a video. It's something about like not bragging, but like wanting attention. I didn't like looking like I want, like, guys, look at my show. Like, I don't like that because it was just me. Like, like I said, if you had been on it too, if it was like the Casey and Cash show or whatever, I would probably share it. But it was because it was just me. I felt weird being like, look at me talk. I don't know. I don't know. I just never shared that stuff. And it was kind of fun having my own little world, though, not sharing it. It was kind of fun.
That's fun. Yeah, I know. You get to have, like, a secret double life where you're, like, a YouTuber, but nobody knows.
Hannah Montana.
I think, like, thinking of our advocacy now and how we feel about it, I really like having this podcast because I kind of like back when I was a teenager and got to talk about my fun time at the albinism conference. I feel like I get to put this in a box, and if people want to hear it, they can hear it. And I don't readily promote this podcast like you were saying. I think really most of what I do is I have it linked in my Instagram bio.
Yeah.
That, we co-host this show. But I like that we get to enjoy this thing. And a lot of the times it really truly does feel like a pure expression of our friendship, since, of course, like we've mentioned before, this podcast was partially born out of our like 3-hour-long FaceTime calls where we would talk about and compare notes and rehash like our experiences living with this disease. And so in a way it just feels like that, but now online.
Yeah. I think if this podcast ever ended, which we don't plan for it to anytime soon, but if this podcast ever ended, I would have a hard time not advocating. I think it's in my bones. I don't know where I would do it or how I would get it out, but I have a hard time not doing it. Like, I think it's like, I know this sounds really maybe over the top. It probably is very over the top, but I kind of, it sounds really self-important. It's not meant to. I kind of feel like it's part of the reason I'm on this earth.
No, I don't think that's self-important.
Like,
I think a lot of people who advocate feel that way, and I feel that satisfaction partially through my job. I work in accessibility. I help advocate for not just people with low vision, but for a variety of disabilities as it relates to like digital experiences, making sure that people can use things equitably. And so I still feel like I get to have some of that satisfaction, but talking about my personal low vision and chronically ill experience, sometimes I get to talk about myself at work and be like, hey, as someone with low vision, I feel whatever. But, I don't know if I don't know. I don't know what I would do if this podcast were to end, because I really feel like I have become a better disabled person. From talking about and processing with someone who has very similar, thoughts and feelings as I do as it relates to disability.
Yeah, and for work, I'm also like in the nonprofit disability space, and it's funny that we kind of both went into things that kind of like scratch that itch for us. And it would be hard for me not to. I just feel like ever since I was little, I just kind of knew I had to grow up and do something. I want to like change the world. I know I'm not going to change the world, but I always like felt this need. And I like knew that I felt that when I was a kid, that I had something to share. I was like, this is like, I have this thing and I want to learn about it. I want to talk about it. I want to be involved. And so I think this pod is like super special. And I mean, I feel like I rarely talk about the pod because I feel like podcasts have a negative connotation of like everybody has a podcast.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't tell you this. Somebody recently that didn't know that I had this podcast with you literally like made a snarky comment like to me being like, oh, everybody has a podcast nowadays. But like they didn't know that I had this pod. And I had to be like, yeah, and it's like, I just think that's really, it's funny. That's why I don't go around being like, I have a podcast with my friend, like I don't share that a lot.
Yeah, because of going back to that thing that you said about posting things online. If you are doing it, you feel like you have something important to say. And I think there are a lot of anyone with a microphone can make a podcast. So, I think there are plenty of terrible podcasts out there where people spout a lot of garbage opinions. And those are the ones that get reproduced. Also, the people who have like large egos and are out there talking as if they are the most important people on this earth. We hesitated doing a podcast because of that.
Yeah.
that conception.
I really I feel for me and for you, I really do feel like it's coming from a genuine place. Like, at the end of the day, it's hard to take your ego out of anything you do in life.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like...
you have to be confident enough in yourself to put it out there in the first place.
I do feel like, though, it's coming from this place of, like, I really do just want to educate. I really do just want to help. I'm not trying to, like, look at me, and listen to me. But I do feel like there is, like, a part of us that like our disability has gone so unseen, like as children especially, that there is a part of me that wants to be seen, and that feels vulnerable for me to say. But it's like,
no, I think everyone desires to be seen, especially when
and understood.
When you know that what you have is so uncommon that very likely the person that you're talking to has never met another person with low vision before. And so how are you going to let them in a way? You don't have to educate the world. You don't have to let everyone in, but no one will ever learn otherwise. And that's something I struggle with. Like in my daily life, I want to be a person. I want to be a person who enjoys regular person things and my fun hobbies. And I don't want to be just like blind Cass going through the day. This is blind Cass, and everyone knows that like this is who I am, and this is my entire identity. And so, but at the same time, I understand that people don't know what they don't know, and that is part of educating. I feel that way when I'm out there with my guide dogs. I really often don't want to talk about it because I just want to live my life. But some people don't know anything. And so I'm like, okay, all
I know.
right.
I don't always want to be the educator. I just want to live sometimes too. But that's why I feel like, I want to educate in my own space and time. Like I want to educate on my own terms. I don't want to have to educate when I'm like trying to pick up a croissant at Trader Joe's or whatever. But
that's exactly where I'm at right now in this stage of my life. And I've been there for a few years where like I get to do it on my terms, which is why I love having this podcast.
Right. And I feel like if people are being weird, we can reference the pod. We can be like, hey, if you don't understand, listen to this pod that I make. All right, thanks.
And it has helped before.
Yeah.
I was with someone last year. I was dating someone, and like it actually helped cut through the chase.
Yeah.
That he actually got to hear a lot of the podcast, and I didn't have to re-explain myself.
Yeah.
Every time I like maybe couldn't see something, or he just understood because he's heard me talk about it online, and I didn't have to waste my own breath saying it again.
Yeah. I feel like one of the last things I'll say that I just kind of thought of is like, I feel like the reason I speak out is, and I know we're kind of talking in circles and this is what I already said, but I thought of like a way to say it. Every time somebody has misunderstood us, or like something has gone wrong with our vision, it's like this pent up frustration that just keeps building and building, where you want to scream, this is how it is. So I feel like throughout my life, it's just been this like building frustration of people not getting it. And I still have that every day. Like I still have people not get it all the time. And so I feel like this is where it comes out. This is where it comes out.
To that, we can turn it around, and something that would be like incredibly frustrating, we can be like, well, I guess it'll make good content,
That's so true. I've seen horrible things happen to blind people before, but then they speak out about it and the article like goes viral and it actually helps a lot of people. And I'm like, I hate that you had to go through that, but I'm glad that people are learning because of that too.
Yeah. No kidding. I mean, our episode that we did about like weird Uber things, I mean, I have even more since then, right? Just because we didn't stop taking Ubers and ride shares, but that was such a satisfying episode for me to record, and it came out of like I had a hilarious Uber experience that I texted Casey like we really have to make this episode because I want to talk about it in a way that it's meant to be out there to be understood, I guess. I don't really know if that makes sense, but we're putting it out there voluntarily so that people to like let people into our experience, because no one would know otherwise. No one would understand this weird nether space we live in.
Right. Without the podcast, something bad would happen to you in the Uber, and then you would just go home and continue on with your day.
Be annoyed about it.
This is an outlet for us. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it, honestly.
Thanks for listening to our outlet. Truly, not just this episode, but any other episode before this.
Yeah.
We made this open to give ourselves room to talk about truly how our disabilities intersect everything. Even the episodes that have been the flare type, not related. What is the word I'm looking for? My brain melted halfway through that sentence, but. Not like strictly disability related. Right. That's what I was trying to say.
Totally.
So it's nice, and it is really kind that even though it is in our own community, it is really fun when we get to meet people that we don't know that have found us online in our own community and are excited to meet us. Like, why? But also thank you. And thank you for listening to not our therapy sessions, because we have gotten actual therapy, but I don't know. Just thanks for letting us let you into our lives a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. We will see you next Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays from now.
Yep, that's the one.
Yep.
Bye!